Hey there, herd watching audience. I wanted to take a couple of minutes here and talk about sort of the way the news coverage runs and look at a typical example of the news cycle vis-a-vis the Trump presidency and sort of why it is you see that a fair number of us who are Trump supporters have simply, we don't really participate in your panic, nor do we find most of the panic particularly credible, and certainly we don't take media-induced panic particularly seriously. So let's talk about sort of the one story as it broke. So now 4 officials at the State Department have left government service or have announced that they're leaving their current position in government service because some of them are staying. Now, let's follow that narrative as it went through. So when the story first broke, it was spun this way. The entire upper management of the State Department resigns rather than continue to operate under President Trump. And the sub-reporting, the subtext there, as it was shared and as the original article was written, was Donald Trump is so crazy, so unhinged, and so clueless about foreign policy that the lifetime professionals in the department have decided that they would rather leave their government jobs and move out into the world and potentially be unemployed and homeless rather than help Donald Trump impose his crazy fascist will on the world around us. And this scathing rebuke of the Trump administration is just one more sign that in the eyes of experts and professionals, he has no place being president, and yada, 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 yada. And how, my God, how are we going to run our foreign policy when all the professionals are leaving? So that was narrative 1. And that was packaged up, made into memes, retweeted, and flooded the internet for hours. For a little while yesterday morning, that was the narrative as it went. And now, by today, 24 to 36 hours later, the narrative is Donald Trump fires leadership in the State Department. And this just goes to show you that Donald Trump is so crazy and so unhinged that he is firing all of the top people no matter what because they dare to disagree with him. And obviously Donald Trump shouldn't be president, and oh my God, the sky is falling because how are we going to run our foreign policy when Donald Trump insists on firing all of the smartest people in the room if they dare to disagree with his ego? Imagine running around. They're running this way. They run that way. Okay, so it's all a nightmare, but nobody can agree on which nightmare. And here's the thing. The media would have coalesced around whatever narrative stuck. So yesterday's narrative that all these guys had resigned and, woo, vive la resistance, that was driven by an article. I'll have to look it up, but I think it's Washington Post or it might have been Washington Post. And that sort of was pushed. And when it never really gained too much traction, not everybody else jumped on board. You saw the reporting from the other media outlets was a little more like, well, they definitely mentioned it because they weren't going to let such a great opportunity go by, but it was very much more not this is happening. It was, well, this is what's being reported as happening. And they sort of waited to see if the memes were going to stick and what the real response level was, and it just never quite caught on. And then so now they're floating this other one, that Trump fired everybody, and that's the horrible thing. And there's not really any acknowledgement from the media that yesterday's story was wrong. There's no acknowledgement from the meme factories, Occupy Democrats and friends, that their work yesterday was wrong. They're just not going to do any of that. They're just going to, today's, the new day is the new day, and, we've always been at war with East Asia, and, that's just the way it is. Now, the truth is somewhere in the middle and much more benign. So these people involved serve at the pleasure of the president, and it is fairly traditional when a new president comes in for these people at this level to offer their resignation, and then the new president either accepts the resignation or allows them to stay on, or they announce their retirement. So if their resignation is accepted, basically, then they either retire or they are removed from that post, but in many cases find work in other places. And in this case, I think one of these guys is retiring from public service permanently, and at least two others are in fact expecting to have jobs within the State Department doing the foreign affairs stuff, just not at the level of the position they're in right now, which means they didn't resign in protest. They what looks like happened is they tendered their resignation, and that Trump accepted it, and in some cases he may have emphatically accepted it, or sort of let someone know, hey, I am going to expect you to tender your resignation, because there are significant policy differences between some of these guys and Donald Trump. But this idea that there was some sort of purge and that that's unusual, or that this was a protest resignation, is simply untrue. Neither of those things is true. Okay? Like all presidents, Donald Trump is cleaning house from political appointees and presidential appointees who might not be willing to work wholeheartedly to support his agenda going forward. This is simply not particularly unique, nor is it particularly difficult, nor are these four people particularly out of hand as far as, yes, normally the incoming president really only lets two of these guys off the hook and keeps two out of the four, and four is maybe like one person more than normal, so it's ever so slightly out of the ordinary. But given the contentiousness of this particular election, and given how Barack Obama stacked the departments with people that buy into a fairly radical foreign policy agenda, it's not shocking that, given that Trump's policies are very different, that this would be a significant change and that we'll see a slightly higher than normal turnover. But honestly, what I want to focus on here is this idea of narrative balloons, and that in the old days, a real press that wasn't desperately attempting to regain relevance by playing gotcha with the president, that a real press would have reported these guys leaving, floated a couple of ideas as to what could have happened, and then we would know over the next 48 hours what was going on, and there we would be. But no, not this press and not this president. That's just not the way this is going to unfold. They are going to, they're desperate to find their kill shot on Donald Trump. They cannot believe that they didn't manage to prevent him from being president. They've reported all of this stuff. Their level of hysteria is so extreme that they can't back away from it and retain any of the credibility that they have now. So every threat is going to be the final threat. Every story about Donald Trump is going to be the one that brings down his presidency. And they cannot and will not back away between their egos and their politics and their professional concerns. We are going to be treated to a while longer of exactly this sort of idiocy where, oh my God, it's the end of the world. And it's going to keep being wrong, and they're going to be like, oh, well, that wasn't the end of the world, but we mean it, it's this one. You've got, idiots out there data archiving the national science information because Donald Trump is going to delete the national science information. And, scientists can't publish their findings, oh my God, because he shut down Twitter accounts of government agencies that were injecting themselves into political realms they weren't supposed to be, and now he shut those down like most presidents do, and that's supposed to be the end of the world. And what the media fails to see, and what the left fails to see, what is now becoming called the control left. Get it? Alt-right, control left, I get it. But as the sort of regressive control left, which is actually in charge of their party right now, as they continue to drive the media to higher and higher heights, the average person is just checking out more and more. And CNN is losing, CNN and MSNBC and these places, including Fox to a degree, are losing more and more of their influence and their ability to simply define public sentiment. And this is driving them crazy. And everything is going to be the worst thing ever until they find the magic formula that lets them bring down Donald Trump, and then they will rise ascendant. And this is the problem. I'm all for an opposition media. An opposition media is supposed to mean that they are fearless, they will pursue the truth, and that if that hurts those in power, it hurts them, and if it helps them, it helps them. But that they are going to follow the story, the real story, wherever it leads. An opposition media does not mean a large media organization like CNN, like MSNBC, like ABC, who is dedicated towards lying and manufacturing, that their job is to bring down the presidency at any cost. That's not what opposition or the loyal opposition is supposed to mean. It's not what a free press is really intended to be about. Now, I support their freedom, but I also think that there's no obligation on the part of this administration to continue to act as if these people are providing a objective public service, that sort of special protection the press has had because they're theoretically objective. I don't think this administration has to pretend that that's true anymore, when what we're really talking about is a partisan entertainment company. And that means that CNN doesn't necessarily deserve any more concession from this administration than TMZ would or Access Hollywood. Like, I mean, if you're going to become an opinion broker and an entertainment channel, then that's what you are, and that's fine. But to the extent that Washington Post and now CNN is floating this mass purge story, you know, I think they think they're back in the days when the administration has no mechanism for getting its side of the story out. But it does. It has enormous power to simply tell it the way it sees it. And do I blindly believe the administration? No. But right now, this administration has more credibility than CNN does. Because if nothing else, at least the administration is honest about their agenda. Okay. We're coming up on 12 minutes. As you can see, I'm where I need to be to pick up some breakfast so that I can get on with my day. I will catch you guys later on. I have some cartoons coming for herd watching, so keep your eyes on that. It might be through the end of the weekend. I got some client work I got to do, and paying the bills comes first. Talk to you guys later.